Rachel moaned another man's name in her sleep 3 weeks ago. That's how this started. She mumbled it like muscle memory. Dream state. No filter. Just, Derek? Soft, pathetic, like a woman remembering something that made her knees buckle. I didn't ask questions. I didn't shake her awake. I just stared at the ceiling, her breath still warm against my shoulder, and waited for my heartbeat to slow down. I'm not the jealous type. I've lived too many years in spreadsheets and overcooked steak dinners to let a name break me. But that morning, I timed her shower. 10 minutes longer than usual, and I watched her stand in front of the mirror, rubbing lotion into her thighs like she owed someone a good impression. She never used to care about the skin behind her knees. She said she had a team offsite in Denver that week. Only she packed her black lace set, the one she once called too much effort. And her perfume? 2 extra sprays. Enough to choke a TSA agent. I kissed her goodbye at 4:30 a.m., said good luck, and stood in the driveway long after her Uber had turned the corner. You don't marry someone expecting to one day memorize their lies. But here I was, charting patterns like a damn CIA analyst. Same rhythm every time. Rachel would leave on a Thursday. She'd text once when she landed. Then silence after 10 p.m. Always. She'd call in the mornings, chirpy, like she'd been up since sunrise, and then meetings all day. That's what she called them, meetings. They, plural, suspiciously nonspecific. Still, I didn't accuse. I waited. I watched. Until one morning I was folding laundry. The chore she used to say I messed up too often to be trusted with, and I reached into the pocket of her peacoat. A crumpled receipt from a spa. One of those places where the font alone screams, $4 water and cucumber slices you didn't ask for. The kicker? The spa was in Nashville. Rachel said she'd been in Charlotte. That receipt wasn't some smoking gun, it was a quiet nuclear bomb. Because it meant either she was sloppy, or she didn't care if I noticed. And frankly, I couldn't decide which hurt more. If you've made it this far, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button. Over 97% of folks listen without subscribing, but this kind of storytelling takes a whole team to deliver, and your support keeps us going. Anyway, I slid the receipt into a drawer. Not my wallet. Not the trash. A drawer. Because that's what men like me do, we collect facts. Calm. Patient. I wasn't going to confront her with one breadcrumb. I wanted the whole damn loaf. So I tested her. The following week, she said she had to fly out again. This time to Houston. I casually asked what hotel they were putting her in. She hesitated. Said they were rotating. That sometimes they book last minute. It didn't even make sense. Corporate doesn't rotate hotel rooms like bingo numbers. But I didn't press. I smiled. I cooked her salmon. I poured her wine. And while she packed her bag, I noticed she triple-checked her hair straightener. I started keeping track. Not a journal. That's too obvious. I kept voice memos on my old office laptop, the one she never touched. I recorded what she said. When she said it, I'd replay them when I was alone, lining up the inconsistencies like puzzle pieces from 2 different boxes. Sometimes I'd laugh at how lazy the lies were. Other times, I just sat there, eyes burning, wondering if she ever missed me during those trips, or if I'd become the annoying roommate who paid half the mortgage. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. A man's gut is rarely wrong. It just gets ignored because we're told silence is strength. But silence without awareness? That's just surrender. And I wasn't surrendering. Not yet. It started with a post-it note. A yellow one, stuck on the fridge like always, with her flight number and hotel scribbled in that loopy cursive she used when pretending to be organized. OS 276, Hilton Seaport. Back Sunday, it said. No heart. No miss you already. Just itinerary, like a business memo addressed to someone she barely respected. So I waited till she left, kissed her forehead, handed her the protein bar she always forgot, and sat at the kitchen table staring at that post-it like it owed me answers. By 10 a.m., I'd already looked up her flight. Boss 276. It existed. It had landed on time. So far, the story held. But something still itched at the back of my skull. Something about the way she said, "I'll be swamped," as she walked out. That little pause before swamped. Like she was translating from a lie into a language I'd believe. So I called her company. Not from my cell. From the landline we never used. I made up a story. Told the receptionist I needed to send Rachel an urgent package. Legal documents. She asked for my name. I said I was her brother. Then came the pause. Not long. Not dramatic. Just enough for my fingers to clench the edge of the counter. "Oh," the receptionist said finally, her voice chipper. "She's not traveling this week. She's working remotely." Working. Remotely. Not in a boardroom. Not at the Hilton Seaport. Not in Boston. I thanked her. Politely. Casually. Then hung up and stood there, watching the second hand of the kitchen clock swing back and forth like a pendulum waiting to saw through my ribs. I didn't scream. Didn't throw anything. I just sat on the floor and tried to slow my breathing, because I realized something. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment slip. This was a premeditated structure. A blueprint of deceit. She had crafted a fake location, a fake reason, a fake schedule, hell, even a fake post-it, and assumed I'd never check. And she wasn't wrong. For months, I didn't. That night, she called at 9:43 p.m. Like clockwork. I answered on speaker. She didn't know. "Hey babe," she chirped. "Sorry, long day. Just wrapping up now. You might hear some noise. We're still in the boardroom." There it was. The lie standing naked in the middle of my kitchen. I could hear something. Muffled voices. Background chatter. Could have been a recording. Could have been a damn YouTube video playing off a phone. I didn't even care. The moment she said boardroom, it confirmed everything I needed to know. I didn't even respond right away. Just listened. Let her fill the silence with more fiction. "You'd laugh," she continued. "David tried to pitch his entire market strategy with spinach in his teeth. I swear, these guys are like children sometimes." I said, "Hope someone filmed it." She chuckled. "God, I needed this laugh." Then she asked about my day. I gave her nothing. Just mumbled something about the dog not eating. She barely noticed. Said she had to get back. "Early start tomorrow," she added. Breakfast meetings. Breakfast meetings. Cute. When the call ended, I sat in the dark and opened my laptop. Typed the words, "fidelity clause enforceable in divorce," into Google. Then I clicked through to her company's leadership team page, found her boss's photo, and stared at it. His name was Derek. The same name she whispered in her sleep. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was logistics, infrastructure, a relationship operating on corporate time and marital fraud, a double life with slide decks and hotel robes. And for the first time in our entire marriage, I felt clarity. I was no longer guessing, no longer hoping I was wrong. She was lying, and I was done pretending I didn't notice. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break you, it makes you suspicious of the entire world. Every smile starts to look rehearsed. Every handshake feels like it's hiding a dagger. And yet, despite all that, I still didn't expect the rabbit hole to go as deep as it did. I started with company photos. Rachel once told me they didn't allow spouses at work events. Said it created liability complications. But someone's always tagging someone on LinkedIn, or posting birthday photos, or humble bragging about a quarterly win with a filtered selfie. And there she was, Rachel, 3 rows back in a group photo at a company retreat in Asheville, grinning next to Derek, her married boss. Both of them holding drinks. Too close for HR. Too familiar for coincidence. And then, like a bad punchline, I saw the woman next to them. Polished. Smiling tightly. Arm draped loosely around Derek's waist. That was his wife. The one Rachel said was cold, controlling, insecure. Her name was Allison. I stared at the photo until the screen started to blur. Not from tears, those were long gone, but from the slow grind of realization. Allison wasn't the outsider Rachel painted her to be. She wasn't the jealous housewife Rachel pitted during wine-fueled rants. She was just another person playing the role she'd been assigned while the script was being rewritten behind her back. I looked her up. She ran a small design firm. Public portfolio. Clean branding. Professional headshots. I found her email buried in a PDF resume from some women in tech panel she'd spoken at 3 years ago. I wrote, "Hi Allison, this might be difficult to read, but I believe your husband and my wife are having an affair. I'm not trying to cause problems. I need to know if I'm crazy, Paul." I almost didn't send it, but I did. And then I shut my laptop and sat with the guilt, the fear, the what if she blows up on me tension humming in my chest. I imagined her deleting it. Or worse, forwarding it to them. I imagined Rachel confronting me before I was ready. The whole thing falling apart like a house of cards built on top of my shaking hands. But a few hours later I got a reply. Just 2 words. "Let's talk." She sent her number. I waited another hour, then called. Allison didn't sound angry or panicked. She sounded tired, like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for so long she forgot what light felt like. She didn't waste time on small talk. "Do you know about St. Louis?" she asked. Rachel said she'd been in Dallas that week. Allison exhaled like she'd been punched in the gut. "Then yes," she said. "It's real." We compared dates, cities, lies, patterns. Turns out they weren't even clever. Same hotel chains, same weekends, same excuses, just gender swapped. Where Rachel had client dinners, Derek had supplier meetings. Where Rachel had exhausting travel, Derek had early flights with the team. We matched dozens of trips, canceled family events, last-minute delays. Once, they even used the same exact excuse to each of us on the same day: power outage at the office. Rachel texted me, "No Wi-Fi all day." Derek told Allison, "They're rebooting the whole system." She laughed when I told her. Not a joyful laugh, the kind you hear at a funeral. By the end of the call, we had a timeline, a file, a shared Google Doc titled Proof. It felt surgical, clinical, necessary. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel insane. I felt seen. Allison wasn't some scorned wife. She was meticulous, focused, methodical. She wasn't interested in screaming matches or posting about toxic men on social media. She wanted leverage, and she wanted them to know they weren't the smartest people in the room. That night, we stayed on the call until 2 a.m., mapping patterns, cross-referencing lies, syncing calendars. She sent me screenshots of Derek's trip prep checklist. I sent her photos of Rachel's receipts. Two strangers building a case against the people who lied to both of us with the same breath. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was partnership. Allison called me 2 nights later, voice tight and clear. "They'll be in Asheville this weekend. Corporate realignment retreat. It's not on Rachel's calendar because she doesn't have clearance, but Derek does." I checked. It was almost laughable. Rachel had just told me she was flying to Phoenix for a quarterly budget scrub with 2 guys from regional, who didn't even exist. I nodded at the dinner table while she sipped her red wine and made passive jabs at how stale our meals had gotten. She mentioned she'd probably hit the hotel gym, maybe even read a book. The picture of innocent routine. Meanwhile, her phone, synced to the same Google account she never thought I'd bother checking, showed her dropping pins near the Biltmore estate. Not exactly budget scrub territory. I booked 2 flights, one for me, one for Allison. Separate confirmation emails, different banks, different departure times. We wouldn't fly together. We wouldn't stay together. This wasn't some dramatic tag team ambush. It was reconnaissance. Surgical. Cold. They were scheduled to arrive Friday. We landed Thursday night. The moment Allison stepped off the gate, I could tell this wasn't her first rodeo. She had a tablet in one hand and her husband's location history already pulled up. I picked up the car, black Hyundai Elantra, anonymous, and we drove the last 2 hours in silence, passing glowing roadside diners and fast food chains lit like confession booths. 2 strangers bound by humiliation and strategy. We didn't check into a hotel. That would be predictable. Exposed. Instead, we parked in a 24-hour grocery lot and rotated shifts, napping in the car like amateur PIs. It was absurd. It was pathetic. It was necessary. The next morning, Allison sent me a photo. Derek, Rachel, walking hand in hand like they were 20 and bulletproof. Laughing. She wore the same scarf she claimed was too expensive to travel with. His hand rested on her hip like it had lived there for years. They sat at an outdoor cafe near a boutique hotel with ivy crawling up the bricks. The kind of place you go when you want to feel like you're someone else. I watched from a bench across the street, sipping coffee so bitter it felt medicinal. I watched my wife lean in, whisper something into her lover's ear, then toss her head back and laugh. And the sound didn't carry, but I felt it. That laugh, that freedom, like the rules had stopped applying to them. And that's when the rage almost won. My fingers curled into fists so tight my nails left marks in my palm. I thought about walking over, screaming, flipping the table, dragging her out by her designer coat and shoving the truth in her face. But I didn't, because this wasn't the climax. This was just the setup. Later that night, Allison pulled up her prenup. Fidelity clause. Signed. Dated. Notarized. She smiled like someone about to cash in on a lottery ticket. I sent a message to my lawyer. Initiate draft. I want the papers ready within 48 hours. Add financial separation clause. Irrevocable. He replied with one word. Understood. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about ensuring that when the moment came, there'd be no escape route. No rewritten timeline. No gaslighting. No, it didn't mean anything, or we were on a break. Or you're being paranoid. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being precise. Allison and I watched them enter the hotel just before sunset. He carried both their bags like some modern chivalrous cliché. She looked back once, smiling. Not at us. At nothing. Like her guilt had evaporated with the sunset. But guilt is a funny thing. It tends to come crashing back all at once. Especially when you answer the door wearing silk and find your husband holding divorce papers and the woman you called a ghost standing beside him. We would wait. One more night. And then we'd knock. The air in the notary's office smelled like dust and printer ink. Cold, sterile. Exactly the opposite of what I was feeling. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That part was gone. What replaced it was something worse. An eerie calm. Like I'd already watched the plane crash and was just documenting the wreckage now. Piece by piece. I need to add a clause, I said. The notary blinked. You already have dissolution grounds and preliminary asset separation. I want it retroactive. Effective the moment she receives it. The second I hand it over. He looked at me for a beat, then nodded. We can do that. I handed him my ID and watched as he stamped page after page like a silent executioner. 26 pages. I'd been working with the lawyer for a few weeks, quietly, discreetly. At first it was just curiosity. What if I was wrong? What if Rachel wasn't lying? What if she really was just tired, just overworked, just drifting? But when you live with someone long enough, you learn to hear the pauses between their words louder than the words themselves. And Rachel had been pausing a lot lately, especially when saying, I love you. So I prepared. Slowly. Like laying sandbags before the flood. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends. Not family. Not even my sister, who always said Rachel reminded her of a cat trying too hard to act like a dog. I kept it sealed tight. Because once a plan like this leaks, it bleeds out in a dozen directions. And I needed control. After signing, I slid the documents into my coat pocket. Not a folder. Not a briefcase. My coat. I wanted to feel them against my chest. Like armor. When I stepped outside, Allison was already waiting in the rental car, scrolling through something on her phone. Her nails were perfectly still. No twitch. No crack in her voice when she said, He's in the room. Hasn't left since they checked in. She passed me a printed packet. 50 pages. Color-coded. Derek's signature on every single one. The prenup. Highlighted. Underlined. Clause 14b. The parties agree that sexual or emotional infidelity shall be grounds for nullification of spousal support and redistribution of marital assets in favor of the non-offending party. Clean, she said. No wiggle room. I nodded. You sure you want to be there? She didn't look up. I need to be there. I didn't argue. We weren't there to vent. We weren't there to cry or plead or ask for explanations that would be dressed in apologies and soaked in bullshit. This wasn't going to be a movie moment where someone gets slapped and the crowd gasps. We weren't knocking to create drama. We were knocking to deliver terms. She looked over at me, her voice suddenly softer. What if they're already expecting us? I smiled. They're not. Because that's the thing about people who cheat. They only plan for the moment after they get away with it. They don't expect consequences. They don't prepare for paperwork. They think discovery means yelling, not documents. Tears, not signatures. And that's why this would work. Because Rachel thought I'd break. That I'd beg. That I'd unravel in a puddle of confused monologues and passive-aggressive dinners. That I'd keep orbiting her gravitational pull while she built a second universe with someone else. She had no idea I'd already filed to escape gravity entirely. We ran through the plan one more time. Room 614. Allison would knock. I'd stand behind. Let Rachel open the door thinking it was Derek's late-night room service or an extra pillow. And when she opened it, robe on, wine in hand, she'd see us. Two ghosts from the life she discarded. And I'd hand her the envelope. No speech. No screaming. Just, effective tonight. Allison pulled a folded scarf from her bag. Black. Well, not for the weather. For the moment. You ready? She asked. More than I should be, I said. Because grief had already come and gone. What remained now was precision. And the sound of a do not disturb sign swaying gently in a hotel hallway. 8:07 p.m. That was the timestamp on the security camera in the lobby, the one angled just above the elevator bank. I saw it later, long after the dust settled, when I requested a copy for legal clarification. But in that moment, as Allison and I stepped onto the 6th floor of the boutique hotel, all I heard was the pulse behind my eyes and the steady crinkle of the envelope in my coat pocket. The hallway was narrow, carpeted in that over-patterned paisley design every upscale hotel seems to think screams luxury. Room 614 sat at the far end. Lights dimmed. Quiet except for the muffled sound of a TV somewhere playing a sitcom laugh track on a loop. Plastic joy echoing through paper-thin walls. Allison didn't hesitate. She smoothed the front of her blazer, adjusted the printed prenup in her hand, and nodded once. I knocked. Not loudly. Just enough. A shuffle inside. Light footsteps. Then the deadbolt clicked, chain slid, and the door opened with the hesitant ease of someone expecting convenience, not consequence. Rachel stood there, barefoot, in a silk robe I'd never seen before. Not hers. Too sheer. Too black. Wine glass in hand. Burgundy lipstick slightly smudged like she'd been laughing. She opened the door with that fake tired smile she used on delivery drivers and hotel clerks. Hey oh! Her mouth froze mid-smile. She blinked once. Then she saw Allison. Her whole face shut down like a computer pulled from the wall. What the? Allison didn't wait. She stepped forward like she owned the room because in a way she did. Rachel stumbled back instinctively, clutching her robe closed, nearly spilling her wine. I stepped in behind Allison, shut the door behind us, and locked it with one smooth click. That sound made Derek appear. He stepped out from the bathroom area in a t-shirt and boxers, toothbrush still foaming in his mouth. And in that exact instant, I saw the moment recognition hit his eyes. Not panic, recognition. He knew who we were, and he knew why we were there. He didn't say a word, didn't even spit out the toothpaste. Allison turned to Rachel, stared directly at her robe. Nice, she said flatly. Glad my Amex is still getting some mileage. Rachel opened her mouth. Probably to lie, to explain, to pivot, but I didn't give her the time. I stepped past them both, walked to the dresser like I'd stayed there before, and placed the envelope down with care. Effective tonight, I said, my voice clear, measured, dead calm. Rachel blinked rapidly, mouth twitching, processing. Paul, wait. This isn't. I turned. Oh, it is, I said. It's exactly what it looks like, which is rare, I know, considering how much effort you put into making sure nothing ever looks like what it is. Derek still hadn't moved. Foam now dripped onto his shirt. Allison faced him. I'll be emailing this to HR. And our attorney. It's already time-stamped and backed up. I'll expect your keycard to be left at reception in the morning. He opened his mouth. She raised a finger. Don't. I already knew when you booked the flights under your private account. Amateur. Rachel clutched her robe tighter. Paul, please, this doesn't mean anything. That line. That tired, broken, overused line. I looked at her, really looked, for the first time in months. The woman in front of me wasn't the version I'd built in my mind. She wasn't a victim of burnout or boredom or some ambiguous marital rut. She was simply a person who made choices. Calculated, deliberate, repeatable choices. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was just done. You'll find the bank accounts already split, I said. Your cards are flagged, not frozen yet. Don't test them. I left your laptop in the foyer at home. Password changed. And the dog? He's staying with me. He never liked hotels anyway. She blinked again. Wait, what? You'll figure it out, I said. Allison took one last long look at her husband. Next time you lie, try not to re-wear the same cologne I bought you for our anniversary. She turned, walked out. I followed. Rachel didn't chase us, because for the first time in this entire tangled mess, she realized she didn't have the script anymore. And that's when the collapse began. Rachel dropped to her knees like someone had cut her strings. The robe slipped off one shoulder, but she didn't notice, or didn't care. Her wine glass lay shattered by the dresser, dark red soaking into the carpet like a slow bleed. She reached for my leg, fingers trembling, eyes wide and rimmed in desperation. Paul, please. It wasn't like that. Her voice cracked on the last word, the way it used to when we argued about nothing. Bills, missed calls, who left the porch light on. But this wasn't nothing, and she knew it. It was emotional. That's all it ever was. I was confused, she said, voice hitching, lip trembling like some high school production of guilt. I felt ignored. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think. You didn't think. I echoed. Calm. Clinical. She grabbed for my hand, still kneeling on the floor like a scene from a bad drama. You have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. We didn't even, Paul. It's not what you think. Behind her, Derek was already gone. Not physically, he was still in the room, but spiritually, the man had vanished. He'd retreated into the bathroom and closed the door halfway, pretending not to hear. Cowered in a $90 t-shirt. Rachel pressed her forehead to my leg. You and me, we've built a life. You know me better than anyone. Please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy or counseling. I'll delete everything. I'll change my number. I'll block him. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even look at her. I just let her keep talking until her voice blurred into the air conditioning hum. And that's when Allison stepped forward. No preamble, no monologue, just one swift, decisive movement. Her open palm met Rachel's cheek with the sharpest, cleanest crack I've ever heard in my life. It echoed off the hotel walls. Real, surgical, meant. Rachel's head snapped sideways, hair whipping across her face. Her mouth opened in shock, but no words came out. Allison stood over her, breathing steady, voice low but clear. That's for calling me irrelevant at the Christmas party. Rachel's pupils flickered, searching, remembering. She had said that months ago, loud enough for the table to hear but quiet enough to pass as sarcasm. Poor Allison, she'd murmured between sips of Chardonnay. Still thinks marriage makes her special. I remembered the way Rachel laughed afterward. The side glance. How she casually wiped the rim of her wineglass with her thumb like she was already cleansing the comment from her record. Now, she knelt on the carpet, robe askew, wine on her knees, face flushed from more than the slap. She wasn't crying anymore. She was stunned. Not because she'd been hit, but because someone dared to hit her back. And for the first time, she didn't know how to spin it. There was no narrative here to twist. No camera to angle. No sympathetic audience to sway. This wasn't her stage anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered. It wasn't for the affair. It wasn't for the months of lying, or the stolen weekends, or the lipstick-stained lies told over the phone while I walked the dog she forgot we owned. It was for being caught. And not just caught, cornered. I crouched down next to her, meeting her eye level. Calm. Steady. You lied like it was your job, I said. And maybe it was. But you never stopped to wonder if the people you were lying to would stop playing along. She opened her mouth again, but this time I didn't wait. I stood, looked at Allison. We're done here. As we turned to leave, I heard Rachel's voice again. Please, don't tell everyone. I paused. Allison didn't. She reached for the door handle and said, flatly, you already did that yourself. The hallway outside was quiet, dim. The kind of silence that carries weight. A housekeeper walked by, paused when she saw Rachel in the doorway behind us. Collapsed and dazed, cheek red and eyes blank. She glanced at us. Allison didn't blink. Room 614, she said, calmly. Might want to check the carpet. And just like that, we walked away, not with satisfaction, not with revenge. The bar was one floor down, dimly lit with fake mahogany and overpriced bourbon lists framed in leather menus no one read. We didn't talk as we walked in. There was no dramatic exhale, no victorious laugh. Just the quiet gravity of what had been done settling into our bones. Allison chose a booth near the back, the kind with the red leather cushions worn smooth by decades of whispered infidelities and quiet business deals. I headed to the bar. The bartender, a kid who looked barely 21, glanced at me, then flicked his eyes toward Allison. Scotch. Neat, I said. He nodded without a word and poured. Behind me I could feel it, the hush that follows something real. Not loud. Not obvious. Just the low static buzz of people realizing they'd seen a moment they weren't supposed to. Allison had already dialed her lawyer. She spoke low, professional, like she was confirming a dinner reservation, not detonating a marriage. He was in the room, she said. Undressed. Witnessed. Prenup clause applies. I'll forward the photos and time-stamped entry logs. She didn't even blink as she said it. I took my drink back to the booth. Sat across from her. No clink of glasses. No toast. We just sat there, breathing, processing. I looked down at my hands. The same hands that had built a life. Cooked dinners. Held Rachel's waist at every damn Christmas party while she leaned into other people's jokes. Now those hands had handed her an envelope that would unravel everything she thought was secure. Allison slid her phone face down on the table and finally spoke. "He's going to cry," she said. Rachel already did. "No," she said flatly. "Cry for himself, for what he lost. Not for me, not for us. Just for the inconvenience." We both let out something close to a laugh. Not joy, just relief escaping sideways. Near the entrance, 2 hotel staff were standing behind the bar's podium. One leaned in and whispered to the other, "Is that the woman from 614? I heard one of them murmur." The other didn't respond with words, just gave a look. A sharp breath through his nose. A tilt of the head. You didn't have to speak when the story was that good. And that's the thing about places like this. People pretend they don't notice. But they do. Housekeeping talks. Reception sees names on room bookings. Bartenders recognize returning guests. And when a man in boxers gets confronted by 2 stone-faced strangers, one of them holding legal documents and the other holding receipts, it becomes folklore before the elevator even dings shut. By the time we finished our drinks, 3 more people had turned their heads as we walked past. By morning, Rachel wouldn't just be dealing with a personal scandal. Her boss, Derek, was already on thin ice for a prior HR flag. This would tip the scale. And she, the once rising star, the one who always bragged about being the youngest regional strategist ever hired, would now be the subject of murmured jokes in conference rooms and side eyes in Zoom calls. Because hotels talk. Emails leak. People remember room 614. And reputations, once cracked, don't glue back clean. I stood up first. Allison followed. As we walked past the podium, the younger staff member stepped aside, trying not to make eye contact. Too late. His curiosity was as loud as a trumpet. Allison leaned toward him, just enough to let her voice carry. He ordered the same wine for all their trips. Maybe suggest something new next time. The guy froze, color draining from his face. Outside, the air had cooled. The sky was the color of regret. Gray with just enough orange to pretend it was trying to brighten. Allison looked up at it, then at me. "Do you feel better?" I thought about it. Really thought. "No," I said. "But I feel finished." She nodded. "Close enough." We got in the car and left them behind, naked, exposed, and irrelevant. Rachel returned 2 days later. Not to me, God no, but to the house we once shared, her little fortress of curated appearances. She came back alone, in an Uber, just after sunset. I watched from the upstairs window as she stood outside, key in hand, confused. It didn't fit, because the locks had been changed. Quietly, legally, with an email to my lawyer and a printed statement taped inside the foyer window. Notice: property access restricted to authorized resident. Documentation available upon request. She stood there for a full minute, suitcase handle clenched, phone in her other hand, deciding whether to call or knock. She did neither. Instead, she stared at the door like it had betrayed her too. Then she looked up. Maybe she saw me, maybe not. Either way, she didn't wave. Just walked back down the steps and got into the Uber she hadn't canceled. Her safe little return plan, undone with one turn of a screwdriver. I didn't watch the car drive away. Didn't need to. She'd learn the rest soon enough. By Monday morning, the office storm had already started. Allison had sent a neat, annotated PDF of the prenup, highlighted clauses, timeline overlaps, GPS records. All time-stamped, all professional. No emotion, just legal landmines laid one by one. Rachel's boss, Derek, was called into HR first. Then legal. By noon, his calendar had been wiped clean. Out-of-office reply activated. On leave pending review. That's how they phrase it when someone's about to be quietly gutted from the inside out. No fanfare. No email blast. Just a void where someone used to sit. Rachel tried to stay ahead of the narrative. Sent a few emails to clarify misinformation. Called a couple of board contacts to do damage control. But the scent was already in the water, and sharks swim fast. Her promotion, senior regional strategist, announced 2 weeks ago with balloons and a LinkedIn post, was placed on hold. Indefinitely. The company couldn't risk having her name attached to a sexual misconduct investigation. Even consensual affairs, if they cross managerial lines, light fires under compliance departments. And the moment Allison's file hit their inbox, the temperature spiked. HR phrased it delicately. "We're reviewing all internal relationships for compliance with our ethics policy." Please refrain from further media posts during the review period. Translation. Sit down, shut up, and wait to see if you're worth the scandal. Rachel didn't shut up. She tried the whisper campaign, told mutual coworkers I had sabotaged her career, that Allison was vindictive, that Derek was the real predator. She even played the mental health card, dropping hints about stress and burnout and how she was being unfairly targeted for personal issues. But whispers are no match for timestamps. And someone somewhere leaked the bar footage. You couldn't hear much, just body language. Allison walking confidently, me calm, collected. Rachel robe-clad, shocked, a slap, the door swinging open, the hallway stairs. It hit the group chat before it hit the executive floor. And just like that, Rachel wasn't the rising star anymore. She was that woman from 614. Back at the house, her mail still arrived. Credit card offers, a spa postcard, a letter from the HOA about holiday decorations, which I threw out because she always ignored them anyway. I boxed up her remaining clothes, left them in the garage, didn't bother folding, just dumped them in neat piles and sealed them shut. Labeled the boxes R and miscellaneous. Nothing personal, no notes, no goodbye. She texted me once. Please don't do this. I didn't respond, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because silence was the only thing left she hadn't rehearsed a comeback for. You can't spin silence. You can't guilt it. You can't gaslight it into becoming something else. It just sits there, unmoving, absolute. And in that stillness, she finally had to face something she couldn't charm, couldn't manipulate, couldn't outmaneuver. The consequences, not from me, from herself. It was a Tuesday, rainy, cold in that awkward early spring way that tricks you into leaving your coat at home. I got the text while watching the local news, half listening to a story about rising property taxes. Just one coffee, please. I stared at the message for a while. No dramatic music, no clenching fists, just a slow exhale. Then I typed, tomorrow, 3 p.m., Red Elm Cafe, neutral ground, public, no illusions. I chose a table in the corner, back to the wall, facing the entrance. Habit. She arrived 6 minutes late, of course, wearing the coat I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago and pretending not to notice I wasn't smiling. Hi, she said, like we were still us. I nodded. Nothing more. She sat down, fidgeted with the sleeves, ordered a peppermint tea she wouldn't drink. And for a moment, she looked exactly like the version of her I used to believe in before secrets wore her thin. I appreciate you meeting me, she started, voice soft. I know I don't deserve it. I didn't answer, just watched her try to arrange her words into something redemptive. I was lost, she said. I don't even know when it started. I kept thinking I could control it, keep it separate. It wasn't supposed to be a betrayal, Paul. I swear. It just happened. She paused, studying my face for a crack, a twitch, something. I gave her none. You know, she continued, eyes misting with performance or pain. I couldn't tell anymore. I kept telling myself you'd always be there, that no matter what you'd still love me, that you'd understand. I thought. She trailed off, sipped her tea, grimaced, didn't swallow. I thought you'd never leave, she finally said. And there it was, the truth. Not regret, not guilt, just shock that her safety net had stopped catching her. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to feel the weight. You confused my silence with weakness, I said. That was your final mistake. She blinked hard. Once, twice. Her bottom lip twitched like it wanted to apologize but didn't know how. I miss you, she whispered. Every morning, every night. I miss the way you used to look at me like I was home. She reached across the table, slowly, hesitantly, fingers trembling. But I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't take her hand. Just let it hover there between us like a broken bridge no one was willing to rebuild. I stood up, dropped a 5 on the table for the tea she wouldn't drink. Her hand was still reaching when I turned and walked out, the door chime echoing behind me like a final bell. I didn't look back, because it wasn't about closure. It wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing, finally, that I didn't owe her either.